Prologue. Left or right? October 11th. At 37 years old, Elli had gotten herself into another mess. Yes, a mess. Or, let's be honest, a prison. Not a literal prison, of course, but without much of a warning she found herself confined to a family situation of looking after an old relative. A situation she saw no way out from. The circumstances around it were a mixture of betrayal, people-pleasing, and not knowing how to stand up for herself. Adding in a good amount of fear of ending up on the streets. And it's done. You're done. Now, there was simply one more thing for her to do that she absolutely did not want to do previously. Signing up for a dating site. Elli had always thought of it as humiliating. Putting yourself up on the market like that. What if people she knew saw her? Didn't it spell desperate as nothing else? Well, she didn't feel she was desperate for a relationship. She was desperate for deep conversation. After traveling for a year in the wide world, she had gotten used to talking to all sorts of fascinating people with grand ideas and adventures. Now, back home, which wasn't even truly a home, she felt completely disconnected, lost, and that nobody understood her or cared about anything beyond the mundane family and work life. The people around her didn't seem to be one bit interested in hearing the stories she had to tell about what she had seen and experienced on her travels. Worse, nobody seemed to care about what she wanted in general. People just needed her to be useful. However, as this story is not about Elli's family circumstances, but about what came next, I will not elaborate on the details of her situation until it becomes more related to the story, in case it does. At the time, she had only one person still in her life that she considered a friend from her old life, and by old, I mean her life before she left everything behind to travel over a year ago. Something a lot of people do these days. Quit their job, their social circle, sell their home, and just leave, without any clear plans to return. Elli had none of those plans either, clear or otherwise, but she was brought back by a global shutdown. A pandemic, they called it. She didn't want to return home, but was finally forced to when every eligible country shut their doors in front of any casual traveler. Again, the word home here is used loosely, as she didn't have one anymore. She had sold her apartment to fund her travels, and she didn't feel like she was welcome at her parents' house for extended periods of time. A month, the most. Well, it wasn't a month. It was 2 weeks, after which she was packed off to her declining grandmother's place to keep her company. It is no shame to take care of old relatives, sure, but the person her grandmother had become was not who she remembered from her childhood. The proud, confident, outspoken woman. She had become suspicious and paranoid, but also depressed and could spend hours just crying. How was Elli to deal with all that? Anyway, I digress. It was supposed to be about Elli's last remaining friend from her homeland. We'll call her Lysandra. Elli and her had once briefly worked together and bonded over similar interests like spirituality and supernatural things, tarot, etc. They had kept an on and off contact online after their work project ended, and had started to talk more in the recent months before Elli's return. Lysandra was also the only person Elli dared to confide in regarding her situation, about which she did feel quite a bit of shame. At 37, she should be more independent, more decisive, just more. Instead, she had spent most of her money trying to figure out where to go in life. and she still had no answers. She was being treated like a child, and to be fair, she felt like one a bit. Still, when was she going to learn? When was she going to make better choices for herself? And when was she going to stand up for herself and say no? Was she prepared to sleep on the streets, though, just to prove a point? Would it have been the case if she had given her family a piece of her mind? Spoken up about what she really thought of this business? But again, digressing. In one of their casual online conversations, Lysandra mentioned one day to Elli that she had joined a dating portal that a friend of hers had recommended, and that she had found some really cool people to talk to on there. Just to talk. Interesting people, engaging topics, even business contacts. Elli's first reaction was, of course, an eye roll. No way in the world. But maybe? Should she? Apparently, thanks to the pandemic, it had forced more of the normal crowd into using dating apps because, temporarily, there had been no going out, no usual entertainment, no regular meeting places, parties, or fun in general. Even getting a coffee needed a proof of certain qualifications. Even so, real human contact was a necessity for everyone, right? Or well, at least for most people. Perhaps a dating site wasn't such a bad idea in this crazy day and age. Globally, people had to shift their usuals. Elli thought about it. The way Lysandra described it, it actually sounded fun. She was intrigued. Besides, chatting and meeting people online was nothing new to her. If anything, finding like-minded people had proved to be a difficult task for Elli in general, and she was not one to ever walk up to a stranger to strike up a conversation. Online, or when traveling, it had been much easier. People are outside of their daily routines or regular friend groups, and often seek new contacts, or any human contact. What truly sparked Elli's interest, however, there was a guy Lysandra had gone out on a date with, and the way she had described it, it sounded like something Elli had experienced before. The feeling you have known someone for all your life, the feeling of familiarity, instant connection. Could it be? Could Elli meet someone like that on a dating site? Someone who felt familiar. Again. Why not try? If it was going to be bad, she would immediately get rid of the app, along with any bad apples. She had started to realize that in order to even be in the picture and not disappear into her confinements completely, she might have to do something, find a different approach. Maybe a dating site was that something. How else was she ever going to meet anyone? Being stuck in her small town full of ordinary people going about their everyday business? Elli suddenly remembered another girl she used to work with, who had found her now partner from a popular dating app 2 years back. She and the guy used to go to school together, but hadn't really connected like that during their school years. Then they had come across each other's profile on the dating site, years or even decades later. Giving each other a like as a friendly nod, they had then started talking, finding that they had a lot in common and connected like that. And now they were married. Lysandra assured that the site she used was more low profile in their country, therefore being a somewhat less obvious choice for possible old connections, or the top layer of people you'd never want to meet. Less pervs, as she put it. She said these days there were actually some good and fun people with brains on dating sites, not just superficial guys out to get laid or looking for a docile wife material. Or creeps. Elli really just wanted someone to talk to. Someone who understood, or at least with a capacity to understand. perhaps a new friend, as Lysandra was mostly busy with her work and studies in the city, and Elli did not want to bother her too much. Or someone to start out as friends with? Elli couldn't imagine herself actually going out with anyone, her being unemployed and such, which even during the pandemic was not something to boast about. It wasn't even that she did not want to work. She simply needed some time to adjust to life back home, to regain her feet and balance in peace and quiet. There had been some major changes happening in the world, and nobody really knew what was going on or where things would go. 2 weeks was not enough for such a major reset. Elli had a lot of ideas, and she was looking for the perfect way forward, having decided not to end up in another pointless job again that crushed her soul. She just wanted some time to breathe what she could, time to let things settle and to adapt to her new situation. The world was doing the same anyway. Being encouraged by Lysandra and seeing her excitement about getting Elli on the dating app, Elli decided to give it a try. She liked adventures and challenges, so perhaps she could take this as a challenge too? Something to push her outside of her comfort zone, to give opportunity for some magic to happen in an otherwise miserable life. With some thought and consideration, she sighed, opened the website her friend recommended, and signed up. Making a profile took her some time, as she wanted it to be just right, not too much, not too little. Instead, she managed somehow, completely by accident, to upload a photo of a signpost in the woods, where her profile photo should have appeared. And she couldn't find a way to get rid of it. No X button, no redo or re-upload. Damn! Well, that was definitely a sign, even without the post, she thought with a grin. While trying to figure out the next steps, there was a notification popping up saying that her profile photo was not accepted and therefore removed. About time. She really had seen no other way to get rid of it and already thought the profile was doomed and that she would have to create a new one. What a hassle. Not the case, luckily. Every time in her life she faced a small obstacle, she was wondering whether it was a stop sign or a challenge. In this case, she would have maybe even wanted to see some signs that she was not supposed to do this. Alas, no such luck. Elli figured there was no point in actually making a dating site profile without showing their real face. Apart from perhaps some crazy fetish-oriented stuff like feet or married guys, in order to give it an actual chance of working out positively. Most women have at least some very good photos that make them look like supermodels, but Elli decided to go for something that didn't scream attractiveness, to avoid inviting any wrong kind of attention. So she left aside all photos that could be considered even mildly inviting or sexy. Instead, focusing on the goal of finding good conversation, she chose ones that she regarded as fun and showing off her quirky and tongue-in-cheek personality, but were perhaps not the most flattering in the ways of traditional beauty standards. For her purpose there, she didn't need to look pretty, but show character. She modified her name slightly, as she did not want to genuinely put her public persona on that kind of a website, especially in case people she knew were also on there. For some reason she was terrified of being recognized, and she was praying no one would. Elli felt no need to hide her age, however. Again, to put off any unwanted attention or any grown man looking for 18-year-olds. 37 was good. She liked being 37. Hopefully she had become wiser and less naive, despite everything. She would have been more than happy to connect and possibly make friends with women too, as she welcomed enlightening discussions with anyone regardless of their gender. However, a dating site's environment was probably not the most suitable place for that, given its mostly romantic reputation. It felt a bit weird to her to look for women there, as people might have gotten the wrong idea, although she didn't doubt there were brave women who didn't care about what people thought in that regard. Elli didn't feel that brave, so for the time being she stuck with looking for male friends only. After adding a few of her interests on her profile, Elli made extra sure to specify that she was mainly looking for conversations. Very simple, no excess fuss. The next step was apparently having to look for people in her selected areas and swipe them left or right, depending on whether you like the person or not, based on very little. Elli was terrified of accidentally giving a like to someone, getting something wrong or making a mistake, especially leaving a wrong impression on someone. Also, the whole system seemed a bit dismissive to her. These were people, not sorting plastic into different recycling bins. People with dreams and goals, and each with the potential to love. She tried to imagine someone swiping her away into the bin of not interested, and it didn't feel so nice. Her insecurities definitely didn't like it. But she guessed this was how things work these days, and to actually get some results, she just had to get on with it. Besides, when she thought about it, she didn't mind being out of the way of people who just went for looks and who she most likely had nothing in common with. Before she got the real hang of what she was supposed to do there, she already got asked whether she wanted to have children. Whoa, calm down. Third sentence to a complete stranger? Really? Luckily, Elli had Lysandra around for support, and she could share her first eye rolls and confusions with her friend, who at least had some clue what was going on. The whole experience was indeed quite fun. Another person offered her 3,000 euros for marrying him. Day one was definitely interesting. Lysandra made it even more eventful by discussing some dramatic issues that had come up in her latest dating adventure with the guy who had felt familiar to her. Elli had her own idea about what was going on there, and she was trying to give advice and help her friend make sense of it. Soulmates. Elli was convinced that was the case, and that was a topic she knew intimately. After she finally figured out how the dating site worked, and got over her initial fear of getting something wrong, or worst of all, setting herself up to be ridiculed in some way, she started browsing for people that she might actually resonate with. What she found was a bit underwhelming. A lot of men had photos of their motorbikes, cars, or themselves in a gym, flexing muscles and all that. Or of them holding a fish? This is what men thought women were interested in? Muscles and cars and fish? It seemed kind of primitive to her. Yes, there were some handsome and cute guys too, but based on the descriptions on their profile, they were clearly out for some physical stuff only. A few had quite clever introductions, which Elli was happy to share with Lysandra, so they ended up sending each other screenshots of the more remarkable specimens for some well-needed laughs and giggles. Her friend seemed to attract some undeniably weird people among others, perhaps because her age pool was much larger. She was, of course, very attractive also, and a magnet to everything. Elli found it curious that the men her age and a few years older already looked like, well, older men. Most of them. No George Clooney's there, and even 30-year-olds looked like 40 plus in many cases. Perhaps some of them lied, but surely not all of them. For some reason, those men felt wrong. She had no interest in them, no attraction. They seemed as if from her dad's generation, even when close to her age. Elli looked and felt much younger than her real age, and in the past she had been involved with guys over 10 years younger than her. Apparently, It also ran in the family, she had heard from her aunt. Yes, very curious. Reading people's profiles on the dating site, Ellie noticed the general attitude of men complaining about having to write first, and some clearly stating they would never write first, some even calling women lazy. Fair enough. It wasn't the Victorian era anymore, right? It didn't take long for her to receive some likes and messages, and to some she wrote herself. But nothing really went past the initial basic questions and small talk stage. A few wanted to meet up, which she declined immediately. She felt there had to be at least a month, perhaps a few weeks-long talking-only phase, for her to even consider meeting, to make sure they weren't just out for something quick and meaningless, and also to see if they actually had anything in common that would surpass the "what did you do today?" Had they even read her profile? Did anyone read anymore? It went on for a few days in a similar manner. Ellie was still in high spirits, excited, and got more comfortable, or giving less of a damn what people thought, writing to those that seemed interesting to her. She had some good talks, found some friendly people, and also some that expected her to just listen to them talk and be their support unit, without ever asking anything about her after the initial few basic questions. She didn't really mind that too much, because she happily avoided any questions regarding her job and living situation, to which the interest towards her person seemed to be limited in most cases. One thing she noticed was that the whole dating site system seemed to be built for bringing out her insecurities somehow. Even pressing like to someone. Constant comparing, were you accepted or discarded? Thoughts such as whether you were good enough or pretty enough to even give a like to someone who you saw as more attractive than you, and when you didn't get the like returned. Ellie slowly learned not to care so much, not to take it personally. But still, she felt useless in her life, but tried to hold on to the reasons that had led her into it, because she genuinely didn't know what tangible action to take, with the hopes of finding something tolerable as a job in a small town during a pandemic being very frail. The thought alone nauseated her. There was no way out. And she was not going to work in a grocery store again. That was a promise she had given herself years back. Ellie would have happily left that topic aside in her conversations for good, until she figured something out and got herself back on track again. But not many seemed to care about other things. For a lot of people, it was one of the top 3 questions to ask, even though all she wanted was to talk. It was like a threshold. Do you work? Are you married? Do you have kids? Translating to, do you want my money? Are you free? Do you have baggage? Ellie finally got sick of it. She stopped wanting to even talk about herself. She would have much rather talk to people about what was going on in the world, their experiences, how they saw the world, what they thought about certain things and why, what they believed in, what made them truly spark, what they dreamed about. And those were things she didn't mind sharing about herself either. But nobody seemed to care much. A thought occurred to her. Why not change her profile text to what she was genuinely looking for? She did, her new description stating the following. Do you believe in the soul and soulmates? What about reincarnation? Have you an awakened mind? What is inside your heart? Have you faced your darkness? Do you have the guts to be vulnerable? Have you learned the meaning of forgiveness? Do you dare to dream? If you have no clue whatsoever what I'm talking about, it could be we don't have that much to discuss. Or surprise me. She was quite happy with the final version. If that did not invite the type of exchange she was looking for, she had no idea what would. At least, given that people could actually read, she still doubted that sometimes. Ellie felt again grateful that she was able to discuss it all with Lysandra. Nobody else knew of her ventures, and there was no way she was going to tell anyone in her family. Lysandra also helped with Elli's confidence, occasionally giving her some small translation jobs to do, which allowed Elli to have at least a little bit of her personal money, and made her feel somewhat better about herself. At least she could be useful to someone. Even months before Elli's return, Lysandra had already discussed some of her previous relationships with Elli. Now she was sharing her most recent heartbreak, caused by the same person who she had gone on a date with a few days back, when she had first mentioned the dating site. The possible soulmate guy with whom they had felt like they knew each other and all that. Just as quickly it had started, it was finished, and he was gone. She was left heartbroken and very confused. There was definitely something bizarre going on in that girl's love life, and some rather synchronous things were happening. Also, drama. Some guys, after meeting up a few times, seemed to have gotten scared of deeper connections and had started behaving oddly. Or Lysandra's own fears were causing worry. The latest events had made her unsure and stressed, and Elli supported her friend as best she could. She half-jokingly considered herself to be a specialist on manipulation now, after all, and she was able to give Lysandra some advice on how to act in certain situations and how to set boundaries, or who to throw out and when. What Lysandra was saying, though, about some people in her life made Elli strongly feel there really was some soulmate business going on. Meeting people that made you feel like you'd known them before, reactions that came out of the blue and were too strong, a ton of synchronicities all of a sudden. Elli had been through something like that herself not long ago. Yes, she had met an actual soulmate, not the Hollywood movie version, and in the end she had walked away. Now they didn't even talk anymore, and she barely thought of him, as if his whole presence was wiped from her life. Meanwhile, not much had changed on the dating side, despite her new updated introduction. After some days of the same faces showing up in her region, and superficial, dwindling conversations, with her trying to find some substance in this game of people's egos and cheap sex, Elli finally got enough of the men in her area and even country, and she started traveling with the app, changing her location to overseas countries and places she had always wanted to visit, or had been to. At least she took it as a chance to find out what men were like in different countries and places, especially those she had visited or might consider one day moving to. What she found, though, were different names and faces, same attitude. She met people who already had girlfriends, those who were unhappily married, people who just wanted to get laid, and even offered to come visit her if she only allowed them to her home, and, of course, with offers to have sex that didn't consider no as an answer, because they were obviously so irresistible. Getting even more frustrated with the whole game of fools, Elli followed Lysandra's recommendation again and changed platform, signing up for the most popular dating app in their area, not really caring anymore if anybody she knew saw her. At least that was a good side effect of stepping out of your comfort zone. It forced you to have and build up courage to do things you normally wouldn't, and made you care less about what people thought. In the new app there were so many more people, and yet not much sparked her real interest in the end. Even the casual conversations she had with a few friendlier people fizzled out soon over a few days. There simply was not enough substance or interest from either side to keep it going. The whole superficial dating site business simply was not for her, and she kept wondering why she was still trying. Her disillusionment seemed to increase by the hour, and she finally grew tired of the same old. Elli even ended up talking to someone who turned out to be a bot. She would have never even found out if she didn't have the person she was talking to disappearing after some weirdly disconnected replies, and then reappearing a few weeks later with the same exact introduction and responses, which were similarly offbeat with what she was saying. Seriously? What was the point of all that? Why, they now have the potato test, apparently. Elli felt resigned. She really had tried to adapt to the casual chit-chat, to be more casual herself. Perhaps she was simply too demanding? Some people had called her stuck-up in the past. But in the end, it had not satisfied her. She could not mold herself into a normal everyday person. Therefore, after only a week since she first signed up, she gave up. Enough of these superficial games. Those she was actually looking for would not go on any dating site after all. So, she logged off and deleted the app, leaving it aside.